What is going on, guys? In this tier list video, I'm going to be ranking every single John Carpenter movie, but a few things to note before we begin. One is, just randomly, as I was planning to do this video yesterday, it was announced that John Carpenter is getting a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, which is decades too late if you ask me, but at least he is getting one, so shout out to him. Hell yeah, John Carpenter, well deserved, as well as Robert Englund too is getting one, so that is also very well deserved. So good week for the horror community out there. I did a ranking video of some previous directors. I did Sam Raimi and Wes Craven, and when I did the Wes Craven one, the most commented request for the next director to rank their films was John Carpenter, but I have a little bit of a confession to make. There were a few John Carpenter movies that I admittedly have never seen, and a lot more of them that I've only seen one time many, many years ago. So I actually made it a mission of mine over this last weekend. I binged every single John Carpenter movie besides his TV movies, which I'm not going to count in this list. And the only ones I skipped were Halloween, The Thing, and They Live, because I know them all by heart. That just did not require any rewatching whatsoever. It also saved me some time. But there were a few movies I've only seen once, like The Fog or Christine. Well, Christine I've probably seen a couple of times, but Prince of Darkness, I'm pretty sure I only saw once. Vampires, I'm pretty sure I only saw once. So a few of those were in there. And movies I had never seen, like The Ward or Dark Star or Village of the Damned. So those were all in there as well. So I literally watched all of these movies fresh, recently. The ones I'd seen before and ones I'd never seen ever. So they are all fresh in my mind to do a ranking. And that also means that none of them will be in a I have not seen category. So I went extensively, did my research, and watched all of these movies, which was a trip, man. Literally spending the last 3 days binging everything John Carpenter. It was a good time, actually. I didn't mind it, although I wasn't able to get a lot of work done on other things, but I enjoyed the movie binging. It's been a while since I've done something like that, so that was good. So yes, the only thing not included is his television movies. I just didn't have time to get those, so these are all the theatrical released films, and our categories are going to be the same as my other tier list for the directors, where we have 5 categories here. Number 1 at the top is Masterpiece. These are films that are just 10 out of 10. They are perfect. They stand the test of time. They are perfectly executed films. And for me, my top spot, my S tier, my Masterpiece tier, is always reserved for a very limited amount of films. I can't just throw everything I like up there. I have to be like, these are the best of the best. Have to make that category exclusive in order to give it the power that it deserves. The next category under that is a great movie, which the movie is great. It just isn't quite that masterpiece status. It's just a really, really solid, good film overall. Next category down from that is decent. These are movies that, well, they might not be the best, but they're okay. They're entertaining. They're a decent time to sit and watch. You know, they're not horrible, but they're also not, as great as they possibly could be. They're just okay, middle of the road. Next category is the category, where the films kind of mostly suck. There's some redeeming qualities, but overall, just not a great experience. And then the final category is ass, which is just, this movie is ass and probably will never be watched again by me in my lifetime. So those are all the categories. Moving forward, we're going to start with his first film. We're going to work our way through his entire catalog, and we're going to rank these movies based upon my personal preference. So this is not an objective list. This is not your list. This is based purely upon my tastes and my sensibilities. So obviously, my list is going to look a lot different than your list, and I'm sure I will have a couple of controversial takes as we get through this, but just remember, this is not meant to be an overarching objective list. This is just my personal preferences, and I'll try to give reasons as to why I put them all where I do. Now, the first film we are going to rank is his first movie, which is Dark Star, which is a movie I had heard about, but actually never watched until this past weekend. It is extremely low budget. It is a sci-fi comedy about a team of explorers upon a ship called Dark Star that basically kill a bunch of time as they're kind of stuck over this one area, and a lot of hijinks ensue, including this alien creature that was made out of a beach ball that kind of like toys with one of the characters, almost like it's his pet, but at the same time, it's kind of deadly. And it also deals with this supercomputer that is going to blow everything up, and one of my favorite parts of the movie is the ending, where one of the astronauts tries to convince the computer that its data cannot be perceived as fact because of the source of where he got it from. So therefore, he shouldn't blow them all up, because what if he's doing it based upon something that's not true? He basically kind of just like flips the script on the supercomputer and gets him to think about what's real and what's not real, kind of going into the whole like concept of I think, therefore I am, so maybe nothing is real except myself. It is kind of slow. It does kind of suffer from not really having an overall narrative structure. It's just kind of things happening. Some of them are funny. Others are just, you're just kind of waiting to get to the next circumstance that happens. So it can feel a little just dull at times because of that. But I do give it the benefit of the doubt because it is his first film. But it's not really something that I would probably want to go back and watch. It's something that I would probably watch clips from, as opposed to sitting down and watching the entire movie. I think it's a good first effort, but it doesn't really leave too much of a lasting impression for me. So I'm going to put it in the category. I think that it's an acquired taste, and I think it probably does have its fan base out there. And for me, you know, minus a few standout sequences, it's just it's a first film. It's very much a first film. His second movie, though, Assault on Precinct 13. This movie is badass, and I'm actually very impressed about what they were able to do with the low budget that they have. And that's kind of where John Carpenter works best. You can create something out of nothing. He seems to have the most amount of creativity when he is limited as far as what he's capable of doing budgetarily, you know? It's like he finds creative workarounds, and he really builds up the atmosphere of what you're watching. And that's probably my favorite part of any John Carpenter movie, is that he really gives you a sense of tone and a sense of dread in a lot of these situations, whether it's horror or whether it's not, is that he puts you into kind of an isolated area. Actually, there's a few things I've noticed doing this entire binge of John Carpenter's movies. One is that a lot of his films revolve around characters being trapped in a singular location and having to fight their way out. Assault on Precinct 13, Escape from New York, The Fog, The Thing, obviously, you know, those kind of films where characters are just stuck in this one situation and they have to rely on their own wits and resources and team up with each other and do that sort of thing to survive. And that's a common theme you'll see throughout all of his movies. He also has a lot of themes in his movies about religion and science and where they overlap and where they disagree. There's some that are very, very prominent, like Prince of Darkness, that do that, but those themes tend to pop up over and over again throughout his filmography. So just little things that I've noticed. But anyways, Assault on Precinct 13, I think, is a great movie. It's technically an action movie, and what's really interesting about it is that the antagonizing force, these gang members that assault this kind of broken down precinct that is in the process of moving, and you have this one sheriff that is put in charge of it, but it's kind of like this low rundown part of town that, you know, everyone just understands is filled with crime constantly. And it's one of those situations where the prisoners in the precinct have to team up with the police officers in order to fight off the combating force. But the way that he does it is that the force outside of the gang that is attacking the precinct, you never really get to know any of them. And it works more of like an opposing just force of nature that is happening outside, rather than like a Hans Gruber, you know, antagonist or, you know, terrorist or whatever. Instead, it's almost it's not a horror movie, but it almost plays like a horror movie because you have these characters trapped in the precinct and there's just, a force of nature outside, people with guns that you don't really get to see or know, and you don't know where they're going to pop up next. You don't know what window they're going to shoot through next. And, they're just willing to die for this.
I want a vanilla twist.
It's like they almost are like monsters themselves because they don't care if they die or not. They're taking everybody down. So although it is technically an action movie, it plays very much like a horror movie. And for his next movie, Halloween, is there really any debate? Is anybody going to argue otherwise? I mean, I know everyone's list is going to be different, but come on. Come on. Halloween is a masterpiece of horror. It's a masterpiece of cinema in general. It ignited not only just its own franchise, but tons of imitators, brought us Michael Myers into the world, as well as Laurie Strode, Dr. Loomis, all of the classic characters, bringing us into Haddonfield, having this horror movie take place on Halloween about a child that for some reason decides to murder his sister, gets put away in an asylum, breaks out 15 years later, and hunts and stalks these babysitters with just dripping with atmosphere. I love the long takes. I love seeing down the entire street and the entire sidewalk, and you kind of wonder like where Michael Myers is at all times. It's again one of those presences. It's a presence. Sorry. Where he could pop up at any time. He is a force of nature, just kind of like the antagonist of Assault on Precinct 13, where it's like you just don't understand what you're dealing with. You don't know the capabilities of it. You don't know the strength of it. You don't know when it's going to strike next, and you don't even know why it's coming after you. Michael is just the shape in this movie. This is before they get into the lore of connecting Laurie Strode and Michael Myers as siblings. This is just straight up this guy that wears a creepy mask that is stalking these babysitters, and Dr. Loomis trying to find him, kind of serving as like your Van Helsing type character, introducing Jamie Lee Curtis to the world in the role of Laurie Strode.
It's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
And people often argue, what really ignited the slasher genre. There were slasher movies before Halloween, like Black Christmas or even, Texas Chainsaw or even Psycho. But I think Halloween was really the one to get like the momentum going. So whether or not you consider it to be the original, it was the one that kind of sparked into the, it was at the tail end of the 70s, I think 1978, and the 80s were the decade of the slasher. So it's kind of like Halloween brought forth the new era, right? It's a movie that I think still holds up today. And it is more about suspense. There's not a lot of gore, and there's pretty much no gore in the movie whatsoever. There's like a little blood drip here and there, but that's it. It's not very gory. It's all about atmosphere and all about suspense, and also the fear of just that small town vibe, which is something that I relate to coming from a small town. I feel like every small town has its kind of past horror story, or this one weird thing that happened, or this one urban legend. It's not like in the city where there's crime all the time. Usually there's a small town and things are pretty much normal, but there's just this one weird fucking thing that happened that one time and it becomes legend. And that's Michael Myers. So yeah, absolutely a masterpiece. No question about it. And speaking of small town vibes, The Fog as well kind of has that going for it. What I really like about The Fog is that it follows various different characters that all are within this town, where at this particular time of night, this fog rolls in from the shore and some weird shit starts happening. And it's like a ghost, it's like a haunting movie, but I love the creatures within the fog, the kind of ghost pirates. You don't get to see a whole lot of them, but every time they do show up and make a kill, I think all the kills are done very, very well. Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee Curtis, what a great duo there. Although it is always weird for me to see Tom Atkins without a mustache. This doesn't feel right to me. But yeah, you have the radio DJ, you have the priest, you have Tom Atkins' character, and it kind of works as a mystery too, as you're trying to figure out what is going on. It's not just like everybody knows that there's ghosts. People don't know what's happening here, so it's the process of trying to figure it out, while at the same time having all of these different people in different areas that all culminate towards the end. At the end, the climax in the church is great to see all the characters come together, but I like the process of that. I love seeing different characters figure out different pieces of the puzzle. And if they were just all together, you'd have it all figured out. The score for this movie as well, I don't think I've mentioned yet, but John Carpenter oftentimes does the score for his movies too. He is also a composer, and I think the score for The Fog is fucking peak. It is just great. It just gives me that haunting, October Halloween kind of feeling. It's a really, really good movie. My only downside with it is that I think in the final act, it does end very abruptly. I just always want a little bit more in the climax, but maybe they were limited by budget. I don't know. But I really like The Fog. It's not a masterpiece. Remember, masterpiece is going to be reserved for just like the best of the best of the best. But I do think that it is a great movie, and I would put it above Assault on Precinct 13. Okay, so the next one, this is where I'm going to lose you guys, and this is where everyone's going to hate me. But let me just try to explain real quick. Okay, so Escape from New York is an immensely popular film in John Carpenter's filmography, right? It is basically New York City itself has been turned in this giant prison where the dregs of humanity go. It's filled with gangs and warlords, and the president's plane, played by Donald Pleasance, crashes there. He gets taken by the leader of the Duke of New York, and they send Snake Plissken in to rescue him. So I love the premise. I love the aesthetic. It's kind of like a little Mad Max world inside of New York City. And I think that Kurt Russell does an amazing job as Snake Plissken. And of course, this movie was also the inspiration for Metal Gear Solid. Snake, literally based on Snake from this movie. And it has a huge cult following. But I will say, for me, I've always felt a little bit of a disconnect with this movie where I love the setup and I love the premise and I love Kurt Russell in the role, but the storyline of the movie, it's like once the movie gets going, like once he enters New York, for some reason, I'm never as engaged as I want to be. Like, I think John Carpenter films better action sequences in other movies that he's made, including Assault on Precinct 13. The storyline of the film is just kind of okay to me. And there's a lot of stuff in the movie that I'm kind of waiting for it to get past in order to get to, bigger moments that I actually do like. But for some reason, I don't love this movie the same way as most people love it. And I wish that I did. And even in my rewatch, over the past weekend, I really wanted to love this movie. I don't dislike it. For me, I'm going to put it in the decent category, which I know is going to be really low for some people, and people are going to hate me. And I'm really, really sorry. But I got to be honest with myself, and I got to rank these movies based upon my personal preference. But I know that this is the moment where I'm going to lose everybody. So let me try to get it back. Let me try to get you guys back on board. No, but for some reason, I just have a disconnect with it where I think he's made better action movies, and I think that it's just okay. Like, I think it's an all right movie. I don't dislike it at all. Like, I think it's fine. If somebody was like, hey, we're going to watch Escape from New York tonight, I wouldn't be like, oh, no. I'd be like, all right, cool. But, like, if someone says we're going to watch Halloween tonight, I'd be like, fuck yeah. But if you say we're going to watch Escape from New York tonight, I'll be like, oh, cool. And that's kind of where I'm at with it. So, I don't know. I'm sorry, you guys. But I love the aesthetic. I love the premise. And I love Kurt Russell in it. So those are the things that I love about it. But let me try to get back in your guys' good graces. Because obviously The Thing is going to go up in Masterpiece. The Thing is one of the best horror movies ever made. I just did my Thing retrospective where I talked about the 3 movies based on The Thing, but John Carpenter's The Thing will forever stand the test of time. Some of the greatest practical effects ever put to film still hold up to this day. Speaking of Kurt Russell, he is fantastic in this movie. The overall sense of dread and paranoia. Look, I just made an entire retrospective about The Thing. I don't need to go back into it. You guys know that I love it. The only question is, what do I think is a better, or what movie do I like more? Better doesn't, that's not what I mean. What movie do I like more, Halloween or The Thing? I don't think there's a wrong answer, right? And depending on when you wanted to ask me, maybe I would flip-flop them. I would put Halloween as my number 1 just because I'm a huge fan of the slasher genre. I love the entire Halloween franchise, and that's where it all began. I love Michael Myers as an antagonist. So, I'm just a huge, huge, huge fan of Halloween in general. So for me personally, I'd put Halloween at number 1 and The Thing at number 2. But you are not wrong no matter which way you want to flip-flop those movies. Both of those films are absolute masterpieces of horror cinema. And even if John Carpenter never made any other horror movie, if the only horror movies he ever made were Halloween and The Thing, he would still deserve to be in talks of the Mount Rushmore of horror directors. That's how good they are. All right, so moving on to the next one is Christine. So oddly enough, even though nowadays people consider The Thing to be one of the best horror movies ever made, it bombed spectacularly when it came out. And so John Carpenter had to take whatever the next job he could in order to pay the bills. And so he took Christine. And what's really interesting about this is that he took on Christine as a job, but it actually turned out to be an extremely solid, fun 80s horror movie. It's essentially like, I mean this as a positive, it's essentially as cliche 80s slasher as you could get, and that's why it's awesome, because I love 80s slashers. And this movie just happens to have a car as the killer, but it's about a nerdy kid that buys the car, and it starts to kind of overtake him, like the car is possessed, you know, and he starts to care about his car more than anything else, and he starts to become a little bit more of a badass. But at first, you know, it's helping him stand up to his bullies, and it's helping him, you know, get the hot girl that never paid attention to him before. So at first it's helping him, but then it starts going worse and worse and worse, and he starts, you know, just disregarding all of human life in order to, you know, make sure his car is polished at all times and perfect, and basically starts falling in love with the car. The car itself starts killing people. The car can regenerate itself. It sounds ridiculous, and it is, but it's executed so well. I'm going to put Christine as a great movie. I'm going to put it just, just below The Fog or just above The Fog. It's really good. I'm going to put it above The Fog. I'm actually going to put it above The Fog. All right. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. All right. Next on the list is Starman. And this is the first time Carpenter went into a vastly different direction, because Starman is not a horror movie. It's not an action movie. And it's not a comedy. It's kind of like it's an interesting look at humanity, where this alien entity takes on the form of this girl's dead husband and sort of learns what it's like to be human, but at the same time, people are coming after him. And it has a lot of commentary on like empathy, like human empathy and what that means. Like through the main character, the alien is learning what it's like to be human, but at the same time, you know, he's kind of commenting on the ridiculousness of human nature and, you know, our destructive nature. And it's very on the nose. Like it's kind of maybe not quite on the nose as They Live, but it's very much just talking about humanity and empathy and the positives and negatives of humanity in general. There's some weird shit that happens. The most horrific thing is in the beginning, where the alien entity starts out as a baby and it grows into a full-grown man instantly. It's kind of creepy to look at. But other than that, the movie is pretty wholesome. You know, it's pretty genuine. It's pretty wholesome. I'm going to say that it's decent. It's not really my cup of tea overall. Like, I like the themes and I like the messages. I just, it's not necessarily my preferred format to deliver those messages. But I appreciate the film for what it is, so I'm going to say it's decent. Okay, so this next one here, listen, you guys, I love Big Trouble in Little China. To me, this is a near perfect comedy. This is my kind of humor. Like, I don't really know how quite to describe my type of humor, but whatever it is, it's Big Trouble in Little China. But to this day, a lot of people still don't really get why it's funny, because it plays itself straight. But what's happening is it's kind of a satire on particular action movies like, you know, Indiana Jones, like some kind of adventure where this hunky, strong, you know, white hero teams up, you know, with this Asian group of characters that are at war with these wizards and whatnot, you know, and like Kurt Russell as Jack Burton, you know, he is presented as the hero of the movie, but he's actually just a complete, total doofus dumbass and barely does anything that's useful until the very, very end.
Follow the leader. 1, 2, 3. We may be trapped.
And that's what makes it so funny. But like, the movie is still filmed as if he is the hero, but it's everybody else around him that is more knowledgeable, better fighters. They know what's going on. They're solving the puzzles and mysteries. He's just kind of there with a machine gun, just giving one-liners, but he's absolutely useless. And that's what makes it so funny. Like, there's a line, I was dying, I forgot this line. Like, he goes up and there's a bunch of Chinese lettering on the wall, and completely serious, and Kurt Russell's so good in this movie, completely serious. He's like, what's this, some kind of backwards puzzle? And then the other guy's just like, no, it's Chinese. I don't know, man. There's something about that that's really funny to me. Also, you got all this kung fu action. You got these wizards. You got people battling inside their minds. There's weird random monsters that show up. Dude, I don't know how or why John Carpenter got the idea to do this movie, but I think it is an absolute treasure of a film and the kind of movie that we don't get very often. I am seriously tempted to put this in Masterpiece, just because I think it perfectly executes what it sets out to do. And again, this is my list, but like, I think this movie is perfect for what it is. It is just this complete parody, rip on the idea of this masculine hero, and completely like deconstructs it in the best way possible, while at the same time has like a ton of great action sequences. Like, the martial arts in this movie are actually legitimately great. And like everything about it works, and there's weird random monsters. It reminds me of like playing D&D or something. There's like a beholder in the hallway, and it's like giving all these cryptic messages, and then Jack Burton just shoots it, and everyone's like, what, you got to at least try, because like, who would think to shoot it, right? Like, it's some weird floating monster in the hallway. What are we going to do? And he's just like, I don't know, just shoot it. Dude, I don't know. This movie's great. I love it to death. Okay, so the next one here goes back to the horror world, and this is Prince of Darkness with Donald Pleasence. Once again, it's so great to see Donald Pleasence show up time and time again. This one is kind of mostly what I was referring to when I say a lot of the themes of his movies deal with religion and science, and this movie, the plotline itself, is actually that, where there's this weird, demonic entity beneath this church, and a bunch of scientists are trying to figure out what's happening, but at the same time, the church is involved too. People start getting possessed by it, and it's weird. It's a little bit of a slow build, but I find it to be very, very enjoyable, and I think the final act is really, really good. There's a creepy sequence too with like this VHS video footage from the future. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but like, it's good. I think it's good. I think it's solid. I think that it's not perfect. I would say it is a great movie, but I do think that the way that, Assault on Precinct 13, The Fog, I think their execution of their ideas is better than Prince of Darkness, but I do think Prince of Darkness is still a really great movie, and I definitely do enjoy it. The next one is my GOAT, They Live. I have loved this movie for years. I just recently bought it on Blu-ray. I was excited to watch it, especially with the commentary track, which was great. They Live, listen, man, what genre is this movie? Because some people say it's a horror movie, but it's really more of an action movie. And it's got like a sci-fi, it's kind of like a throwback to classic 50s, Invasion of the Body Snatchers. But essentially what happens is, the entire world has actually already been overrun by aliens, and they are keeping us in line. They're keeping us poor. It's basically like a rip straight up on capitalism and our current world that we're living in today, which is ironic since it came out in the 80s, but I think it reigns true even more so today than it ever did before. How, people in lower impoverished areas just don't have a chance whatsoever to rise up. They constantly have to work all day long, and what little money we do make, we have to spend on things to consume to distract us from actually being controlled and those in power and that kind of thing. So what happens is the main character stumbles upon these glasses where when he puts them on, he can see the world for how it is, which is everything being propaganda, everything telling us to obey and consume and don't think about it too hard, and just go to work and don't pay attention to what's going on around you and everything. But everyone that controls the world, instead of it being some rich elite, it's aliens. And they've been controlling humanity for some time. It's such a good movie. I love the commentary on it. It is completely like in your face, on the nose, but in the best way possible. Roddy Piper, I've come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Keith David, the epic fight scene that they have that just goes on and on. It takes like 15 minutes of the movie. It's just so random and great.
Put on the glasses.
One of my favorites of all time. I'm going to put it in great movie, though. The only reason I'm not putting it in masterpiece for me is just because I do think the third act kind of stumbles a bit. Like, I love the beginning of it. I love going into this world, following the main character. I love the second act of, figuring out the conspiracy and finding out the other people that know that the aliens took everything over. But the third act, it does kind of go out on a little bit of a whimper. You know what I mean? Like, it just doesn't, it builds up very, very well, but the third act is just kind of like, okay. But overall, I think it's a great movie, and it's just one little snag for me keeping it from the masterpiece category. But after that, I don't know what happened. We have a movie called Memoirs of an Invisible Man starring Chevy Chase. This is a comedy about a guy that accidentally stumbles upon a science experiment that turns him invisible, and then people are trying to chase him down, basically to find him, experiment on him, all that kind of stuff. And it's a little bit of a romance comedy between him and Daryl Hannah, and they do like different little comedy bits with him being invisible for me, it just fell flat. I didn't think that this movie was very entertaining. I did not find it very funny. This was one of the ones I had never seen before. I watched for the first time over the weekend. Maybe it is kind of just a product of its time period. Maybe, Chevy Chase kind of led the charge more than John Carpenter did as a director. I don't really know, but all I can tell you is from my personal taste and from my personal preferences, I just didn't really enjoy this movie that much. I didn't find very much humor in it. I didn't really care for the characters or the premise. I prefer my Invisible Men being maniacs like the original or the recent remake. The comedy aspect of the Invisible Man stuff, or Hollow Man, Kevin Bacon, this just didn't work for me. But the thing that's worse about it is it's not just that it didn't work for me, but it actually kind of annoyed me. I was actually kind of bored throughout the movie. And to me, the worst thing a movie can be is boring. Like, a movie can be great, and it can be life-changing, and it can make you reflect on yourself, or it could teach you something, right? It could be fun visually, it can excite you, it can scare you. Or even if a movie is bad, sometimes you can appreciate the effort that went into it and it didn't work, or it can be so bad that it becomes entertaining and funny in its own way. But when a movie is boring, then that's the worst for me. And for me, this movie was boring. So unfortunately, it may be the only one here. I'm going to have to put it in the ass category for me. So sorry. However, the next one was fucking great. In the Mouth of Madness, this movie kicks fucking ass, dude. Sam Neill does an amazing performance here. And it's a hard movie to explain because it's one of those films where the main character doesn't even know what's going on, and every single scene you're given a little bit more information and more things are revealed to you. It's kind of a movie where, every 15 minutes there's another twist. But essentially, Sam Neill plays this insurance investigator that is looking for a missing person, and the missing person is this horror author who is kind of like a take on Stephen King. Like, it's not Stephen, it's Solomon Kane, I think is his name. It's sort of like basically this world's Stephen King. But he's gone missing, and people don't know where he is, and his editor went crazy and started killing people with an axe. So he's searching for him, and he stumbles upon this small town that was featured in one of the novels, but it turns out almost everything in the novels that he wrote is true, and also within this town. So every weird little murder mystery, every little horror thing, every monster, every psychopath, everything starts to slowly turn out to be true. And that's another reason why this movie turns out to be so great, is because it has all of these different elements of horror, or things that you would see in a Stephen King novel. Like, it's got the weird, creepy town. It's got, kind of possessed people. It's got serial killers. It's got, crazy dogs that attack people. It's got monsters. It's got, like, people contorting their bodies and crawling backwards and shit. Like, it's got all this weird shit in it. And things just start going more and more insane as time goes on. And so, like, I I just think that it's a ton of fun. It keeps you on the edge of your seat. It keeps you engaged. It keeps you guessing. Sam Neill does an amazing job in the performance. For me, I'm going to put it in great movie. And I'm also tempted to put this in masterpiece, but I think that, we want to reserve the masterpiece category, but I'm going to put it, you know what? I do think I like, personal preference wise, I do think I like They Live a little bit more, but it's going to be right there. But I'm tempted, like both They Live and In the Mouth of Madness. I was a little bit tempted to put in masterpiece, but we got to reserve that. We got to reserve that category. It's got to be a very, very exclusive club. But I think this is the correct order for me, so that's where I'm going to put it. The next one, Village of the Damned, was also a first-time watch for me over the weekend. And two things about this movie I need to say. One is that as a little kid, I specifically remember this cover in the video store when we would go rent movies with my family. Like that image of the kids with the white hair and the glowing eyes seared into my brain. And as a kid, I was terrified of this movie. I'd never watched it. I'd never seen it. I knew nothing about it. But every time we went to the video store, that movie was on the shelf and those kids would be staring into my soul. So as a little kid, I was scared of this movie without even knowing what it was. The other thing is that before I watched this, I saw that most people don't like this movie and they think that it sucks. So I was like, okay, now we're going to enter into the phase, like these last final movies here. I'm going to start getting into the phase where John Carpenter lost his touch. He lost his edge. These movies aren't going to be good, yada, yada, yada. So I was prepared to not like this movie. After watching it, I think it's pretty good. I think it's pretty good, actually. It's not a masterpiece, right? But it's pretty good. It's another like creepy town. It's got Christopher Reeve. Superman is in here. It's got Mark Hamill in the movie as well. And it's a town where this weird kind of fog, kind of goes over the town and people pass out. And then when they wake up, like half the town of the women, they are all pregnant at the same time, whether they've been having sex recently or not. And they all give birth to these weird white-haired children that have this intelligence and telepathic abilities. And, they have this, again, lack of empathy, which is a theme, kind of that he put in Starman, where what does it mean to be human? That kind of thing, this hive mind sort of mentality. It's not very gory, it's not very in-your-face kind of horror. It's more just kind of creepy. It's atmosphere, which is something that Carpenter does very well. I was pleasantly surprised with this movie. I think it's good. So I'm going to put it up into decent, and I'll put it behind Escape from New York, but like I liked it. I actually enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty decent. The next one, Escape from LA, the only sequel. Oh, also Village of the Damned is also a remake, by the way. But Escape from LA is the only sequel that Carpenter has ever done, and just like Escape from New York, I think it's fine. I know a lot of people hate this one also, but to me, I kind of feel like it's just Escape from New York Part 2. Like it's not really any different for me. Like, I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe the Escape movies just hit a different way with me, but I don't really see much of a difference between the two. Like instead he's going into LA and it's the president's daughter this time, and Steve Buscemi's in there. And he surfs, which looks horrible, but it's also kind of funny. I don't know. I think it's fine. But I'm going to put it below Village of the Damned, but I think it's decent. I don't think it's a horrible movie. Next one is John Carpenter's Vampires. And you would think, oh, sweet, John Carpenter's making a movie about vampires? This is going to be peak. To some people it is. To me, it's all right. It's all right. You got James Woods in there in a very strange role. He's very over the top, but he's kind of funny. It's basically about a team of vampire hunters that are very efficient at their job. Like this is way more of an action movie than it is a horror movie. Like because the opening scene is just the vampire hunters doing what they do. They go in, they kill an entire nest of vampires. So they're very, very good at it. The vampires in this movie, they remind me a lot of like the Lost Boys style of vampires. Traditional things work, sunlight, stakes, like that sort of thing. The only thing that brings this movie down for me is that I wish there was more horror. And I think the main antagonist, like the head vampire character, I think he's just very generic. I wish they would have came up with a more, badass style vampire. And then it ties into like the church and stuff, which is like the themes on religion that he brings up from time to time. Overall, I think it's okay, but I don't think it's great. I'm going to put it I'm going to put it above Starman. I don't think it's great, but I don't think it's that bad. It's okay. It's decent. All right, final two movies. In 2001, we have Ghosts of Mars. I specifically remember this VHS cover at the video store back in the day, too. Ghosts of Mars. Wow. Okay, so this movie takes place on Mars after it's been colonized, and this strange kind of fog-like entity, once again, has infected a bunch of people on Mars, turning them into weird, kind of like hills have eyes, monstrous creatures. And it's once again sort of like Assault on Precinct 13, where the police characters have to team up with the criminals. So, but you have, notably, Ice Cube.
I like you already.
As the main criminal character. And, you know, Ice Cube, he, no offense, but he's just Ice Cube in this movie. Like, it's just, he's just Ice Cube in the movie. You know, there's no, maybe he's trying, you know, to act, but it just doesn't work. This is a very early role for Jason Statham, but he's not a main character, but he's just a character that wants to bang the main character the whole movie, which is a weird role to see Statham in after, you know, so many years now of him being like a prominent action hero where he's just some really horny dude in this movie. Very strange. Other actors pop up that I like Clea Duvall. You know, she was in The Faculty around the same time, so I like seeing her in movies when she pops up. She never has a lead role, but I always like her in movies. Pam Grier shows up. But this movie is dumb. But it's dumb kind of like Jason X is dumb, where it's so stupid that it's actually really entertaining. Because once you reach the halfway point of this movie, it's literally nothing but gun shootouts and heavy metal music.
This motherfucker!
Like, that's the whole movie after a certain point. Like, after you build up the story, which is dumb, it just goes into straight balls to the wall, just like attacking all of these possessed people that are pretty much zombies, you know, at this point. They're like, again, sort of like Mad Max style crazy people that are cutting up their faces and stuff. But it just constantly plays heavy metal music while the main characters go out and have shootouts and fight scenes and explosions, and that's this entire movie.
Second time I saved your life.
Yeah, run a tab!
And if you can appreciate it for that, I think it can be a very enjoyable ride. All right, I would never say this is a good movie, but is it enjoyable enough? Yeah. I think I would, oh my God, am I actually gonna, I think I'd rather, okay, no. I think I'd rather at least watch it over Vampires. I would, but again, you have to remember, I'm not ranking this on what I think is the best made movie. I'm ranking this purely on my personal taste and what I find to be entertaining and rewatchable. And if you gave me the choice, you're like, you gotta watch Ghost of Mars or you gotta watch Vampires. You know, I don't want to watch either, but if I had to choose, I think I had more fun with Ghost of Mars, whereas Vampires I thought was okay, but, you know, Ghost of Mars had some action sequences in it that I really genuinely enjoyed. Like, I think the action in Ghost of Mars is better than the action in Vampires. So, yeah, that's where I'm putting it. Finally, at long last, we have, as of right now, and probably will be, the final John Carpenter movie, released in 2010. He has not made a movie for 14 years. He's very, very old at this point. I don't know if we're ever getting another movie out of him. So for all intents and purposes, The Ward is his final film, which I had never seen. This was another first-time watch last night. It was the last movie on the list. Watched it last night. Stars Amber Heard. Yeah. Who is not the best person in real life. But, you know, whatever. She's an all right actress. Okay, it's about a girl that gets taken to a mental asylum, which I like the premise. I like the setting. You know, movies set in insane asylums, you know, always have a tendency to be very creepy. And the atmosphere, once again, is good. Once again, it's dealing with characters that are trapped in a singular location. and she meets up with the other girls that are there, and there's some weird shit happening in the asylum, such as characters supposedly being killed off, either by the staff or by a ghost-like entity that they're all seeing. So it's another movie that has a lot of mystery that's kind of constantly unraveling. And although Carpenter does not do the score for this movie, I thought the score was pretty good. I think the atmosphere is good. But the finale, you know, the twist of the movie is kind of where it all falls apart for me, because it felt very generic. It felt very cliche. I didn't really like the direction it went with it. You know, I feel like a lot of other movies have done the same exact thing. And to me, it just kind of made the entire film fall apart. I know that it's supposed to be a big, shocking twist and revelation, but it was just the kind of twist where, man, for me, it just kind of retroactively just ruined the movie. I don't know. It also, I mean, there's nothing particularly great about the movie. You know, like the performances are fine. Some of the scares are fine. But there really is nothing stand out about it. And when you're talking about a director like John Carpenter that has made so many, you know, famous signature style movies, Halloween, The Thing, They Live, Prince of Darkness, In the Mouth of Madness, The Ward just kind of falls into the background. Like there's really nothing stand out about it. And it just feels kind of like a horror movie that you would see on Sci-Fi Channel, you know, at some point in October, that kills an hour and a half of your time, but isn't going to be something that you think about a long time after. And that's kind of how this movie was. I mean, even as movies that are a little bit more ridiculous, like Ghost of Mars or something, you know, which you could argue is a bad movie, has massive entertainment value just from the sheer ridiculousness of it. The Ward is a very kind of paint by numbers asylum horror movie. It's okay, but it's just not great, and it's not something that you want to see Carpenter go out on. Unfortunately for me, now a lot of people, I saw that this has like a very, very low rating and people don't really like it. I wouldn't put it in the ass category really, but I'm going to put it in the category. And I guess I'll put it below Dark Star, because even though I still think Dark Star is kind of for a first film, I can have fun with it. You know, it's an entertaining movie. And if I'm ranking this based upon also entertainment value, I think Dark Star gives me a little bit more laughs, a little bit more to think about, whereas The Ward is just kind of all right. It's very unfortunate that that was Carpenter's last movie, because he's made so many classics. But even if it is his last movie, you know, he never makes another film, which is very likely. I think he has enough great movies in his catalog that it does not taint his entire legacy. Sometimes when directors make films for decades upon decades, eventually they kind of, you know, lose touch a little bit and fall off. But even The Ward is not like an abysmally bad movie. You know, it's not like he made Halloween Resurrection. Like, it's not like he made Jason Goes to Hell. Like, you know, it's not like horrendous, right? It's just mediocre. All right, guys, so there you have it. There are my rankings of every single theatrically released John Carpenter film. I know that I'm probably going to have a couple of controversial takes here, and I apologize about that, but these are my personal tastes and preferences. And after just literally spending the last 3 days binging every single John Carpenter movie, all of these movies are very fresh in my mind, and so I feel like this is the most accurate list that you're ever going to get from me. When I did the Wes Craven one, admittedly, a lot of those movies I haven't seen in a very long time, or I've only seen once, and you know, I felt a little bit, even though I could do the list that way, I felt like I wanted to do a little bit better for this list. So I really, really wanted to go back and rewatch movies and see the ones I haven't seen and give you guys a true, honest list from my perspective, and this is it right here. So let me know what you guys think down below, and you can let me know how you would rank John Carpenter's films too. You can do like your top 5, top 10, or you can rank all of them. So let me know what you guys think down below. As always, guys, thanks for watching this video. I do appreciate it. Please give it a thumbs up and a comment, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. Other than that, oh, also, if you are a John Carpenter fan, I just did a 1-hour retrospective of The Thing, and I also have a Halloween retrospective as well that you guys can check out. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.